Have you ever wondered what happens when one family controls so much gold, silver, copper, and even culture itself? If you've walked the streets of New York and seen that famous wild spiral building on Fifth Avenue, adorned with the Guggenheim name, you've likely witnessed only a shadow of what was once the empire of one of the most powerful families in American history. The Guggenheims not only owned the richest means on the planet, but they managed to transform their fortune into a legacy of art, culture, and power that continues to resonate to this day. But behind that glitter lies a secret story of rise, power, and transformation. This is the history of a family that built its wealth by extracting the most valuable resource from the earth, only to make the leap from industry to culture, securing an eternal place in the history of art and politics. The patriarch of this dynasty began life with nothing but ambition. Mayer Guggenheim arrived into United States in 1847 from Switzerland. Driven by poverty and discrimination against Jews in his home country. Penniless, but with the vision and savvy of a salesman, Mayer began working door to door selling goods. The Guggenheim fortune was forged from a stroke of luck. In 1881, Mayer accepted 2 silver mines in Colorado as payment for a gift. A risk? Absolutely. But what began as a minor accident became the beginning of one of the largest industrial empires in American history. The mines proved to be extraordinarily rich, and the young immigrant not only extracted silver, but also developed one of the largest fortunes on the planet. Over the course of just one generation, Mayer Guggenheim's 7 children, including Daniel, Solomon, and Harry, expand their power. They look over copper, lead, gold, and silver mines throughout America, and their fortune began to rival that of the country's most powerful families, including the Rockefellers. By 1918, the Guggenheim family was the second richest in the United States, with a fortune estimated at between 250 and 300 million, which would translate into billions today. At the time, the Guggenheim's power was colossal. They controlled more than 18 of the world's silver, copper, and lead production. The control of this empire was reflected in their lifestyle. On Long Island, the family lived in a gigantic 50,000 square foot mansion known as Hempstead House, a luxurious palace in which every corner was a testament to their wealth. With 40 rooms, a 60-foot-high entrance, and a stunning art collection, from medieval tapestries to works by Rembrandt and Rubens, the mansion was a statement of boundless wealth. The Guggenheims weren't just wealthy, they were the epitome of power in 20th century America. But the Guggenheims weren't satisfied with unreserved wealth. In 1937, Solomon R. Guggenheim, one of Mayer's sons, changed the family's course by founding the Solomon R. Guggenheim's Museum in New York, a museum dedicated to modern art that would later become a culture icon worldwide, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. The spiral-shaped building became one of the most recognizable structures in the world. In the same way they had dominated the mines, the Guggenheims would dominate the art world, and not just in New York. Peggy Guggenheim, a niece of Solomon, left her mark in Venice, transforming her palace on the Grand Canal into a museum housing her extraordinary collection of art, from Picasso to Dalí, and becoming one of the most fascinating and eccentric figures in the history of art. Art wasn't the only field in which the Guggenheims left their mark. While Solomon and Peggy transformed culture, other family members became involved in journalism, politics, and space exploration. Harry Guggenheim, for example, founded Newsday in 1940, which became a landmark newspaper on Long Island. Meanwhile, Solomon's brother, John Guggenheim, was selected to the Senate for Colorado. Daniel Guggenheim, another of Mayer's sons, dedicated himself to sponsoring aerospace science. and was responsible for funding the early work of Robert Goddard, considered the father of liquid fuel rockets. The Guggenheims weren't just involved in industry, they were also driving the future. But behind all this opulence lies something else, a complicated legacy. The family, despite its enormous wealth, faced internal problems that reflect the tensions and sacrifice inherent in power. The Guggenheim's women were, in many cases, key figures who called the convention of their time. Peggy Guggenheim, for example, was known not only for her exceptional art collection, but for her personal life, filled with scandals, parties, and a history of affairs with artists, philosophers, and writers like Samuel Beckett. Known for her bohemian lifestyle, Peggy was a rebel in a family that symbolized order and tradition. Her art collection, which included Jackson Pollock, Marc Chagall, and Fernand Léger, redefined the concept of collection, and she herself broke the mold of aristocracy in her personal and professional life. Meanwhile, in the political world, young Guggenheim had to deal with ideological clashes within the family. As a senator, his views often clashed with the conservative policies of his brothers, especially Harry, who had close ties to the political right of the time. The family was also affected by personal tragedies, such as the death of Benjamin Guggenheim aboard the Titanic, a highly published event that deeply affected the family. Despite the family's troubles, the Guggenheim's influence never waned. Over time, the Guggenheims transformed the way money was viewed in the United States. What began as a ruthless exploitation of natural resources became a legacy of culture, art, and philanthropy. Through their foundations, such as the Daniel and Florence Guggenheim Foundation, they fund crucial advances in space technology and other scientific fields. The foundation, which was instrumental in funding the first liquid-fueled rockets, also left its mark of the history of science. Today, more than a century after Mayer Guggenheim began his mining empire, the surname remains synonymous with wealth, art, and prestige. The Guggenheim name graced museums on 3 continents, with the Guggenheim Museum Bilbao in Spain being one of the richest architectural achievements in modern history. His influence on the art world is incalculable, and the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum remains one of the world's most important museums. However, the Guggenheim's family story also leaves a lingering question. Can art and culture truly redeem a fortune built on the exploitation of natural resources? If the family managed to transform gold, silver, and copper into art and culture, can we say that the ends justify the means? Today, the Guggenheim descendants continue their legacy of power, influence, and philanthropy. The Guggenheim Partners investment funds, which manage more than $300 billion, are proof that control over precious metals has been replaced by a much more sophisticated domain: control over money and global investment. Meanwhile, the Guggenheim name continues to resonate in the world of art and culture. But behind every museum, every work of art, every sculpture on display, there is a story of sacrifice, infighting, betrayal, and family scandal. The Guggenheim didn't just build their fortune by extracting metals from the earth. They also extract beauty, power, and culture from every corner of humanity, and use it to build a legacy that lives on, almost a century after its heyday. If this video left you speechless, imagine what's coming next. Like if you enjoyed the trip, comment on what impressed you most. Subscribe so you don't miss any stories of luxury and power, and share it with someone who dreams big. We don't just tell stories here, we live them with you. Thanks for being here, and remember, the best in the world is yet to be discovered. See you in the next video.